All right. Welcome to the Leadership is Female podcast. Christine De La Rosa-Stotz, head of media at Spartan. Gosh, we are so happy to have you here today. And I'd love for you to do your own intro. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thank you guys so much for having me. Very excited to be on. I'm Christine. I'm the head of media at Spartan. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot that goes into where you are today. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how did you get there? Let's just go way back. Let's go to college. You went to Seton Hall. How did you choose that school? And was the major of journalism a no-brainer for you?
So it's kind of a weird thing. I didn't really choose Seton Hall. It was like last second kind of audible, if you will, where I was really looking to move to California at the time, but my grandmother had passed away, and then it was just my mom with me. So I didn't want to leave her alone. And I kind of changed my direction last second. Ended up deciding to go to Seton Hall literally on a whim, didn't go look at the campus, didn't do anything, but I just saw that they had like a good communications program. A couple of friends I knew were going to the school. So I was like, I'll be fine. So kind of just happened randomly. I think when you're that young, you're not really thinking that long term. So you're like, my friends are going, I'll have a great time. It'll be fine. Obviously it worked out. I'm really happy that I went there. The program there was amazing. So I majored in communications and ended up getting a bachelor's degree in broadcast and visual media, which is like, I always knew as a kid that I wanted to work in production in some way. So yeah, it was kind of like a no-brainer to go there and do that.
So you landed your first role at the NFL. A lot of young professionals, this is their dream start. What was your biggest takeaway from the first stop in your career, and what did it feel like to get that first contract in the NFL?
I mean, again, the reason why I say it was definitely worth it that I ended up going to Seton Hall was I cheered all through Seton Hall, and was with the basketball team a ton, made a lot of connections that way in the sports field. And so right when I was graduating, one of the assistant coaches was like, what are you up to like after school? Do you have like a job lined up? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I have no clue what's happening. I'm just gonna figure it out, I guess. He's like, well, I know you're into, broadcasting and television and production. I have a good connection at the NFL Network. If you're interested, I can put in a word. And I'm like, totally down. And then next thing you know, in a couple of weeks, I had an interview and got the job, was moving out to California in like less than 2 weeks to start the job, which was a wild ride. I definitely recommend it if anyone's like thinking or even considering of living anywhere else. Like, do it when you're young. It's so much fun, even if you don't have it figured out, which I definitely did not. I just went out and kind of figured it out along the way. And yeah, going into the NFL was crazy and amazing because it's an established place. There's a process for everything. So you're kind of walking into something where you're really set up to succeed in a lot of ways because it's been around for a long time. I got really lucky. I worked in the features department. So that really kind of kicked off my career with storytelling, working with really talented producers and kind of seeing what it was like to go from start to finish with production. And I really started learning the foundation of storytelling, of how important the story is and how to bring the story to life and all the little details that go in. And I just got really lucky, I think, along the career where I worked with a lot of really talented producers and directors who were always willing to, extend the hand and show me a little bit more about why they're making certain decisions. And so the NFL and everybody who worked there was really what played a huge part in kind of setting up the rest of what I wanted to do for my career.
Yeah, and your next stop was Vice, where you grew pretty quickly over those few years you spent with the company. And for those listeners who don't know, Vice is the largest independent youth media company, and its portfolio includes brands or media like Refinery 29, if any of you guys follow. And also I'm okay. Let me edit this part. I'm like bumbling my words. All right. So your next stop was Vice, where you grew pretty quickly. For those who don't know Vice, it's the largest independent youth media company, and its portfolio includes Refinery 29. What are some of the most impactful campaigns you worked on, and what did you learn about storytelling while at Vice that impacts your work at Spartan today?
Oh, it's like a loaded question. So I was at Vice for 5 years, and honestly, the path there was crazy. It was like the perfect combination of feeling like a startup in a place that was already established. And I think that's really hard to achieve and like find. And the reason it was that was when I was brought on, I found a job, like a job listing. I was kind of freelancing and I had been working, a bunch of different jobs in production, just like on award shows. So like the ESPYs, I worked with like the UFC. I worked on a 30 for 30 with ESPN. Again, like working with a lot of really talented producers and directors who were all, played some really major part in me learning something about the field and the industry. Ended up, finding the job posting for an associate producer for Vice Sports. I thought it was perfect. I love everything sports. I was obviously on this path. So I interview for it. I get the job the same day. It all kind of like skyrockets from there just because it was such a small team. There was only like 4 of us there. Vice Sports had just started. And the producer at the time was about to head off to China on some crazy thing. And they basically needed someone to come in and help them get all the visas and the paperwork and like just basically help them set up the whole thing. So anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying I started like really thinking it was just going to be just like something like the NFL, where it was a very straight up, like I'm there to do a certain job and that's it. And it was not that. I mean, that's why it was kind of like a startup, because there was just no process for how they were doing things. And so I was trying to figure out like, how do I find my groove when I don't even know what I'm doing? But, again, like all of us that were on the team, the 4 of us that were on the team or whoever, was there at the time, were really helpful, and everyone just kind of did every job. And so there was no shortage of like people stepping in and being like, okay, you don't know what to do here. This is what we're going to do now. So it was good. And then we also had like obviously Vice to lean on, which is a very massive production company. And what's really fun about that organization is they're just very like, I don't know how to explain it, besides the fact that like it's like a very young environment. There's a lot of people there that also don't know what they're doing and are happy to tell you that they don't know what they're doing. So it makes you feel really comfortable. And there was a lot of people there who believed in me and kind of like pushed me into different zones. And so every year was like I was moving on to the next step, where I went from associate producer, then I was kind of like a producer. Then I became like the manager of the Vice Sports production team. And then from there, it just was like, all right, now I'm like really overseeing a lot of different parts of the company. We were working on a lot of branded content, which was amazing. So yeah, I mean, all of that was instrumental in why I ended up landing the job at Spartan, and why I think I've been able to be, somewhat successful in the role, because it just made me realize that a lot of people don't know what they're doing, and that's okay. And as long as you're willing to kind of step in, get your hands dirty, and try to just like get it done and be like super solutions oriented, then like you can get anything, accomplished. Also, doesn't hurt that we live in a day and age where you can literally Google and YouTube anything. So if we couldn't find an editor to do something, I was like always willing to just like figure it out, and I'll try to edit it myself. If we can't figure out how to like Photoshop something, I'll learn and figure out how to do it. And so I think it didn't matter what my title said, like I was always willing to just step in and help if we needed to get a job done. And I think that was something that really like set me up for the rest of the career, especially going to Spartan, where same vibe. I stepped into Spartan and it was like, I came in and was hired as a director of video, which I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to have this title. Sorry, that's my dog, Harlow.
Yeah, my dog is shuffling under my desk. So we are.
I usually have my screen blurred, but it always makes it kind of look crazy. And so I unblurred it, but that's the reason why I have it blurred, was because she just usually comes in and does whatever. But yeah, so I was just saying, like coming into Spartan, it was just really crazy because I got hired as a director of video, and I came in and it just was like, there was no process. So it was like, I was back at Vice Sports beginning days, where there was no process. I just had to like, figure it out. But yeah, like everything that I learned at Vice was the trajectory of going from a place like the NFL, where it's very established, there's a process for everything, there's people that do all sorts of different jobs and help you, was really good, because it helped me see what it's like to work in a place, in an environment that has a process. Then I was able to go to Vice, where like Vice was the place that didn't have that process, and I had to implement a lot of those things, but I was like so green and just learning myself. And then coming to Spartan, it was like I was able to put those two things together and be like, okay, I kind of know now how to set a process somewhere and like just get it going. And it's taken a while. I've been at Spartan for 3 years, but I'm just feeling like this year I really got into my groove with the team and figuring out all these things. So yeah, it all kind of has bled into one another, and I've just taken like one lesson to the next place and then taken that lesson to the next place.
Yeah, well, it sounds like those two experiences, NFL and Vice, really culminated in your landing and then success at the role at Spartan, which is a little bit startup, a little bit organized, because you've got events literally all over the globe, and you direct on site, you're designing integrated video first marketing campaigns that are seen by millions. You are able to create content behind that. Like, talk a little bit more about that storytelling process. Like, not everyone who's listening to this podcast is an ace at media and production and has like that creative eye. But I think we're all telling a story, whether you're in ticket sales or partnerships or new business or premium sales. Like, you've got to be able to tell the story in order to like get the sale or move the business forward. So what are some of the like fundamentals when you're thinking about storytelling that maybe the audience can apply to their work?
That's a good one. I mean, Vice was so big with the story is the key. Like, that's the key. If the story is not strong, then you don't have any foundation, And I think that's something I really took and brought to Spartan, because the beautiful thing about Spartan is, we have millions of people that do Spartans every year. There's an endless well of stories. It's like a bottomless pit of people that have overcome adversity, whether it's they, overcame drug addiction, they lost 300 pounds, they lost their child and then came and, this is what got them through. The stories that you hear every single day here are incredible, and I think that a lot of companies don't have that resource just as easily, but that doesn't mean that you can't take the learning of, how important it is to tell a story and apply that to any job. Honestly, like you said before, it is really important in any job to, if you're trying to make a sale, especially now in this day and age, it's so important to be authentic. Everyone is like, I don't know about you, but for me, the second that I see a new brand, I go to their Instagram, I go to their social media, I see what they're about, I see what they're into. Are they like paying attention to climate change? Do they care about their environmental impact? Like, do they do things for the community? Do they have like their ear to their audience? Like, are they paying attention? Because that's really important. And I think a lot of brands try really hard to feel authentic. But like I said, if you don't have that foundation of like a story that you're telling that you feel very focused around, then it's going to fall short. And the audience is going to see immediately through that, especially in this day and age of everything being on social media. So I think that's one of the biggest things is I always feel like I go back to that root of, is this story strong? Am I telling it in the most authentic way possible? And that's like my biggest thing is I'm not the type of person that will walk into a set and change everything around in the person's house to do an interview with them. Like, I really like to keep it as organic as possible, because I feel like there's a foundation of authenticity there where you'll feel that. And, there's a really beautiful thing about keeping it authentic to that person. If I'm interviewing somebody and bringing their story to life, it's whatever the chaos is going on around them is okay, because that's life, I think I'm like deviating a little bit into like a different kind of storytelling, like true authentic storytelling in terms of like narrative and stuff like that. But more like aligned with the question that you were asking around how do you take those things. I just think it's always like making sure that the foundation that you have is very focused, very clear. And then that way, I think it makes it really easy for you to be able to tell the story to the customer. The second you try to add fluff or you try to make it turn a certain way that it wasn't going to, it's like you immediately know when that happens.
Oh, it's so true. And like sticking to the script, but if the script was already formulated in an authentic way that was true to the brand, like that's what the genesis has to start from a consensus where you've all agreed, this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is our story. This is what we're going to do. and then have everybody sort of marching in that direction. And you can see that if you look at the content on Spartan, it's very clear what the mission is, what you are trying to promote, and how you want to get people involved. It's every post and every video is unique, but the undertone of the story is consistent. And in order to get that job done, like, you lead a team who is pretty much remote, who's traveling a lot to events. We just talked about the fact that you're going to get on a plane in a few days to come out to my neck of the woods on the West Coast to Lake Tahoe. What are some of your key strategies to managing a team that is remote and that is also working these just crazy big events?
It's a lot of logistical planning. I mean, I can't even say that. It's just, there's so many elements to consider. And without the team that I have, it's obviously, that's one of the biggest things, is making sure that the people that you have on your team are strong and are clear on what their roles are. I mean, I think one big thing that I wasn't prepared for probably when I came into Spartan was, I was managing a team at Vice, but I think when I came to Spartan, people were really kind of looking at me to be like a lead, like a true leader. And, I don't think anything prepares you for that moment and that shift in your career when you go from just being someone on the team to someone who's expected to come up with a strategy and plans. And so that was a big hurdle for me, of like figuring out, how do I become an actual manager and like someone that my team feels like they can trust and lean on when they need help or support. And I think a big thing for me was making sure that everyone felt like they were clear in their role. Because for a long time when I came in, I don't think a lot of people were clear on their role on the team. And so that's what I mean. This year, I really kind of sat with the team. We made a big change. We went from just being like the video team to bringing social under my umbrella as well. And I'm not a social media expert at all, but obviously like social and video go hand in hand. So I do have a lot of like experience with, social media and like people that have had, been heads of social media departments and everything. So I think the biggest thing, honestly, was making sure everybody was super clear on their role, knowing what they were responsible for. And then from there, it's just making sure that, again, there's like an over amount of communication, making sure everyone knows. I mean, if you look, we have like all these different meetings. Sorry, my dog's again, just going nuts. We've really tried this year to get to a place where before events, we have certain checkpoints where we know 2 weeks before the event, we're having this meeting. A week before the event, we're having this other meeting. And we know what we're coming to those meetings with. We know we're going to discuss, the plan. We know we're going to discuss travel. So everyone on the team plays this very specific role for these things. Someone's always on top of travel, making sure that they know when everyone is booking, sending the information on like what airport are we traveling to, who's renting cars, all those little details, knowing the crew, knowing what hotels we're staying at. I mean, there's so many things that go into it. And then on top of that, we're trying to like film and get content on the sides of mountains in places where it's already hard enough to go and put the race there, let alone figure out how to like capture content there. So like I said, it's an over amount of communication, making sure that we're always very clear. The second that there's like a red flag that something might not work, we're calling it, even if it's like a small chance that it might. So it's definitely making sure everyone knows their roles, over communicating. And then the last thing for me is always having a backup plan for every backup plan, which sometimes is great, but sometimes can be very stressful. Because, you want to think that you have a plan for everything. And inevitably, it's the one thing that you didn't plan for that always gets you. And so, staying really flexible and having a team that's willing to be fluid and understand that we can't control everything and we have to just kind of be solutions oriented has been really important too.
So in this world where it seems like we could never publish enough content, like what is your like cadence for content production, and how do you maintain like a calm and a just like a good feeling about how much you're producing and when you're putting it out, and how does that work in your world?
It doesn't. Like a lot of crying, a lot of stressful moments for sure, a lot of late night moments with my husband where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is we're one media team that services the entire company of Spartan. There's only a few of us on the team, and we're responsible for all media that goes out for the company, whether it's Spartan proper or one of our sister brands like Tough Mudder, Highlander, Laruda. I mean, the list is, it just feels like it goes on forever. And so I've been trying to get really good about prioritizing, especially this year. It's always been about, okay, what is our key focus for the month? And like, what are the projects that we really need to prioritize? And then how do I get, a bunch of other projects outsourced to other people to try to keep things moving, or else we can't. So we rely a lot on freelancers and contractors to help us get things done. And, some projects are a lot bigger than others. Some have really big sponsorships tied to them. And big budgets. And so for those, we get the ability to work with teams that come on and really help us take it, through the finish line in a timely manner. For everything else, it's just kind of on us and trying to keep up with the demand of, not only is it creating content, just creating the content, but then you take that content, you have to cut it up 20 different ways. You have to have all the different dimensions, all the different lengths, the sizes, the formats, depending on if it's going on TV or if it's going just on social. Is it going to be, is it a campaign that also spans editorial, email? I mean, I think that's one thing too, that I did have a lot of experience that I gained at Vice, was because we did a lot of branded, like integrated and branded marketing campaigns. I had a lot of opportunities to work with the different departments, but because I was the producer at Vice Sports, I was kind of like the project manager as well. So I was able to kind of have my hands in a lot of things and see how one content campaign can then be, dripped out and expanded into a bunch of different departments. And that's really helped here, because there really wasn't a person like that that was looking at it from that perspective. I think when I first came in, it was kind of like everybody had their head in their lane, and it would just be like, okay, what are you doing on email? The person would go over, what are you doing in editorial? And then I was always kind of like, wait, but no one's talking to each other. We need to kind of like talk and brainstorm ideas and see like, where's an efficiency? Like, how can we use this one graphic to span everything? Because it's like, great, so that's been really cool, just kind of learning how to continue to work with different departments and figure out how to make one content idea span like an entire marketing organization.
Yeah, the repurpose of content is so efficient. What's the plan behind that when you have this great piece of content and you want to chop it up and size it in different ways and move it across departments so that it can have a larger impact and also be efficient for the company? What's a little bit more about that process and that sort of silo, like bridge between those departments and the communication patterns to make sure that the best stuff is getting out, and then it's also getting out in more than one way?
I'd be lying if I said that every single time that we went into something, we had it all figured out and it all was executed wonderfully and no one was missing anything. Like, that never happens. It's always a scramble up until the last second that I have. And honestly, it's like, we try to go in when I hear we need to come up with a content plan. It's like, okay, my first questions are always, where's it going to live? Where's it getting distributed? And like, what's the audience? Like, those are the main questions that I ask first, because that really helps me understand how many assets do I actually have to create, because that's so important. I think a lot of times people that aren't in the media space, like the way that I am, is like, oh, we just want to create like one beautiful documentary. And it's like, totally, but that documentary then also has to have like a teaser. It has a trailer. They're two different things. Then we have to have one version for Instagram Reels, another one for LinkedIn, and it's going on TV, so it needs like a 16:9 format. And I try really hard at this point in my career. I feel like I've gotten a lot better with just being able to say, okay, at least these are the baseline things that I know I'm going to need, because that's what everything needs. But inevitably it always comes up that at the end of, we've done all the, the different cut downs, we've delivered everything. And then someone's like, we need a 1x1 for the ads that we need to run, on this channel. And I'm like, okay, we'll cut it. So again, I think it's maintaining that that flexibility in your plannings. I've struggled a lot with that. I'm definitely the type of person that if I have it set, it's set in my head and I got to go with it. And I've been working a lot this year on trying to be more receptive to last second changes, which I usually don't do well with. But, again, I think that there's so many times that people see a campaign go out. Like for myself, I'll see something go out and I see the different assets in all these different places. I'm like, wow, they did such a good job of really taking this content and making it span and fit these different, spaces so well. And it speaks to the audience in all these different spaces so well. And that's really hard to do. It's really hard to do well. So it's just learning, it's continuing to kind of know the landscape and researching all the time, like, what's the audience and researching your own audience too. So knowing what is our audience responding to on Instagram versus what do they respond to on Facebook versus what do they respond to on LinkedIn versus what do they respond to on our TV channel. It's knowing all those audiences and then making those cut downs to fit that audience and making sure that you're working with the people that are leaders in that space. The head of social media, I talk with her every day and I'm like, hey, we have this campaign. I'm thinking this, what do you think? And she'll come and be like, well, this trend's really popular. We should do this, So it's always working with the different people in the departments that are experts in their field and making sure that you kind of are communicating, like I said before, with everyone, like a lot about the plan.
Yeah. And I'm digging into these questions so much around storytelling and working with your team because you are an Emmy nominated and award-winning storyteller, and huge congratulations on that. What is your favorite piece of content that you created or series of content or client you worked with to create an award-winning piece?
So this was a hard question because I feel like there's so many, I don't know, there's so many pieces I love for so many different reasons. If I had to boil it down to like just the top ones, a series that I created at Vice is called Swole. It was a really weird kind of way that it came about. It's just basically a bunch of different profiles on people in the bodybuilding space, which is something so interesting. If you've never looked into it, there's just so much about bodybuilding that's, I think most people look at it as almost like a circus act, like a sideshow type thing. It's like a freak show looking thing, but there's real people that have, real lives in it. And so Swole was one that it got really popular. I don't actually think it won any awards or anything, but that, like when you say what's my favorite piece of content I ever created, I think that one was like the first series I truly produced. It was an idea I had, and like seeing it come to life was really cool. And it did go viral. A couple of the episodes went viral. So that was really like an awesome project that I hold really close to my heart. But then a piece of content that I worked on with like a client that was like award-winning was when I was at Vice also, we worked on a series called Stay Mellow with Carmelo Anthony, a basketball player. And that kind of turned into something called the Clubhouse. And it was right around the same time that Players Tribune was coming out. And so this was like our, like versus, like Clubhouse versus Players Tribune. But the difference for us was that it was video led. Players Tribune was always like editorial led. And so the idea behind Clubhouse was we did this awesome partnership with ESPN. We produced, I think it was 4 episodes with them that aired on ESPN. And, a lot of my friends had seen it and they were like, oh my God, you like worked on this. It's so fun. And yeah, it ended up winning, I think like best like sports. It won a Webby. I forgot what exactly it was. It was like best sports series or short form series or something. But the reason I really love that one was every episode talked about an athlete and something else that they were really passionate about that had something to do with either the community or an issue that we don't talk about. So my favorite episode was one we did with a WNBA player. And it was titled like The Second Job of WNBA Players. And it was all about how, WNBA players don't make a lot of money here in the States, yet, their male counterparts are making millions and, all of this stuff. And most of the the WNBA players have to have a second job, meaning they go and play overseas somewhere where there's a lot more money. And it was just really interesting to kind of dive into that. And that series was a lot of fun. Again, it had a lot of like cultural elements that were tied into it. So I would definitely say check that out if you're into anything around sports and, really interesting stories and seeing another side of athletes that you probably wouldn't see.
Well, it's no surprise that your answer really went back to storytelling, and the top ones were about how athletes, people, like we're multidimensional. They're more than that person you see on the court. Like there's this whole other side of them, and you got to highlight that in in your work, which is just incredible. So on this like trajectory of success that you've been experiencing and growth, has there been a hurdle that you've had to overcome in your career?
It never ends. It's like every day there's 100 hurdles, it feels like. I mean, if anyone said there wasn't a hurdle in their career that they had to overcome, it's a lie. I think I mentioned it before though, the biggest one that I had to figure out was learning how to manage. I mean, I don't know what I expected before getting into a position like this. But honestly, I was just sitting around one day and it just kind of dawned on me like, wait a second, there's like a group of people that are asking me all these questions and I don't have anybody to turn to, and they want me to tell them answers. And like, I kept looking to someone else, like the CMO, to run things by him. And at one point he was like, you just make these choices. I was like, oh yeah, I guess. All right, you trust me, like, cool. And then slowly, like, as I kind of stepped into the role a little bit more and started building the team here and really getting into my groove, I was like, all right, I'm learning how to manage. And honestly, like, my husband is my number one fan, biggest supporter ever, always hyping me up every single day. And there's so many nights where I would feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I here? Like, I don't belong. I have no idea what's going on. And he was always reminding me of the path that I've taken and how everything that I learned at Vice, everything I learned at the NFL, everything that I stand for as a person is all great, to take into consideration and to remind myself of whenever I'm feeling those moments of doubt. And so, yeah, I think that's the biggest hurdle I've had to overcome, learning how to manage, because nothing prepares you for it. And then all of a sudden one day you're like, oh, I'm here now. Like,
yeah, you go from the doer, the producer, to, okay, we see this person can get the job done. And we also see the skill set that they can teach and lead. But you might have the beginning stages of the teach and lead, but it hasn't been fully developed normally before you get put in charge of the group. So I think the first step in that really is like, okay, I need to focus on this. I need to pay attention to it. And it sounds like you've had the right approach. I looked at your Instagram, of course, right? We were talking about that in the beginning, like checking out brands, checking out people, like what are they into? And I saw some like lifting videos of you as well, which was really cool. And I was wondering, maybe it has to do with fitness, maybe in another arena, but is there a goal that you've been going after this year? Did you achieve it? And what were the steps to get there?
So this question is like, I'll answer really honestly, like, there hasn't been like one goal. I feel like the whole mantra this year has just been like riding the wave of feeling like I'm finally hitting my groove. And this year's the first time I ever felt like a leader in some way. So I can't really say there's like one goal that I've had in my head. I think it's always been like, oh, I just want to feel like I'm a good boss. Like, I just want to feel like people feel like they can come to me and talk to me about things. And I want to feel like I'm helping them learn and helping them grow in their career as well. But, I had a baby last year when I was on maternity leave. So last year was kind of a weird ride it's a weird thing to go on maternity leave and feeling like, you got to leave your job, and are you going to have a job when you come back? Like that, all of that's real thoughts, And so I think coming into this year, like I keep saying, it just felt like I finally was just ready to go. I had my time. I was able to like think clearly. I was able to like realign on where do I want to go with my career after this? Like there's still so much more left. And so how do I want to keep positioning myself in a place to keep growing and getting better and to also help bring people along on that ride? Like there's a whole team of people that I work with now. They're on my team that are young and they're super hungry and they're so talented and they don't even realize how talented they are. And I try to tell them every day, like, you guys are so talented, just keep doing it. But I really have been trying to, build those relationships with my coworkers and the people on my team to make sure that they feel like, and also letting them know like, hey, it's a two-way communication here. You got to let me know if I'm not doing something on my side, because I don't know. I keep telling everyone, I don't know what I'm doing ever. Unless someone tells me the feedback I need to hear, like, hey, I don't feel like you're communicating with me clearly about my priorities every day. I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. Like, they have to tell me that. I will have no idea that that's how they're feeling unless they tell me. And so I've tried to really like let the team know, guys, I'm here for you. Let's meet all these times. Let's make sure we have all these like structured things, but also feel free to just reach out and tell me when something's not working, you know?
Well, it sounds like you didn't call your shot, but you absolutely had a goal for 2022, and that was developing your management skills and getting in this place of being a leader and also doing excellent work and making sure your team shines. And it sounds like you're getting there, which is so awesome. And you did mention you had a baby last year, and you're a wife, a mom, and your job requires travel. How do you stay centered among all of your massive responsibilities in your personal life, your professional life, just your life, period?
Yeah, like I don't like same thing, but like it's just not like feasible, you know, and I don't even, it's not like even I have that many things going on compared to so many other people that I see out there in the world, like just killing it at everything. But it just like, it's the cliche saying, it takes a village. And I'm really, really fortunate to have an incredibly supportive husband, a really good family. I mean, you know, both our parents, so my husband and I are like, grew up in the same town. Both of our parents are down the road, you know, our families are really close by. And so we have a really good network of people. Our friends are all really nearby. So there's something about that where when I leave, I never feel uneasy about the fact that I'm leaving my son, or that, you know, I don't ever feel that way. And that's, I think, so crazy, because I do think that a lot of people struggle with that. If you don't have that network of people around you that you trust with your entire life, that can be really difficult. And so I definitely say it's not me that stays centered. It's everybody else that keeps me centered in some way. Because if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's such a great answer. And taking a village has like been the only path through being a working mother. And the work-life balance question is one that always comes up. And I like don't know exactly how to rephrase it better, because it's like there is no work-life balance. This is just our life. So it more becomes this question of like, what are your, what do you do? What are your hacks? Like, how do you stay organized? How do you stay feeling good? Like, those are more of, I think, the tips that we want to talk about, rather than some unachievable balance in our lives. So for you, it's like the village, like your son gets to spend more time with your husband and with your family when you travel on the road. And then when you come back, like you get to be with them. There is no like extra emotion around it. It sounds like that's amazing.
Yeah, like I said, I know how fortunate I am. I feel it all the time, because obviously I travel a lot. I see a lot of other families that are going through the same thing, and it's not the same. And so 100%, I think like tips and tricks of how to, try to stay, or how to hit that work-life balance. I mean, you hit it on the head. There is no work-life balance. I think for me, what's been really difficult is, to be honest, when I was younger, here's my other dog, Bean. When I was younger, like, Vice days and before that, I was like, I'm never going to get married. I'm never having kids. I'm going to travel forever and I'm going to work. I just wanted to work. I didn't want anything else. And it did affect a lot of my friendships, relationships, where I was so focused on my job. I didn't care about anything else. And so now, like, obviously my whole world is completely the opposite, And for me, something that I've really paid attention to is understanding that I'm not always going to be obsessed about what I'm working on. And that's okay. When I'm not feeling super excited about what I'm working on currently, a project or whatever it may be, and that's the honest truth, that every single project is not a dream project. There's a lot of stuff too that I have to do that I don't feel like doing. And whenever I have those moments, I think I used to let it affect me really negatively, because I'd be like, oh, I suck at my job, or why can't I get motivated? And then a mentor of mine, the person who ended up getting me the job at the NFL, who I still stay in touch with to this day, I called him up and I was like, hey, I'm just like not feeling great about my job. I feel like insecure about what I'm doing. Like, am I doing the right thing? And he was asking all these questions about my job. He's like, well, you get to travel everywhere, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, and you get to work on all these really cool projects, and some of them might not be that great, but you're also doing different things like every day. I was like, yeah, you're right. And he kept asking me all these questions. And at the end of it, he was like, you kind of just answered your own question of why are you feeling insecure and everything. Like right now, your priority might not be your job. Right now, your priority is your family, and you have a baby, and that's okay. And maybe that's why it's like the universe telling you you're not on a really passionate project right now because you have the ability to give more focus to your family, to your husband, to your baby, to your whatever, your friends. And I never thought of it that way. And I thought that that was like life-changing information. I was like, oh, so I don't have to be obsessed with every project that I'm working on. And I don't have to pour my entire life and brain and creative energy into that. I can take all of that energy and put it into my family instead. And so that was really life-changing information that I feel like an advice where I was like, sometimes it's okay to not feel super motivated at work. Sometimes it's okay to feel like maybe you don't even want to work here, But I think we just go through all these like emotions and these, things. And it's maybe the universe giving you a sign that when you're not super into that one thing, it's because there's something else for you to put that energy into.
Oh, beautiful golden advice. I love it. And I'm sure it's exactly what some of our listeners needed to hear at this very moment. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, you're going to get ready to pack for a trip soon. And I love a good travel hack. Do you have any to share?
So I struggled with this. I feel like I struggled with every question, honestly. I'm like, I don't know, like, I'm not sure. So I have like two little travel hacks. One's a mom hack where it's really specific. I was like breastfeeding and traveling at the same time. I used to carry this little cooler around and I'd like, pack all the breast milk and bring it back home. And one travel hack that I have for any breastfeeding moms out there is to always bring like one of those like collapsible like dog bowls. And they sell like these wipes that clean your pumps without any water. And those two things together like saved my life on travel days where I'd be delayed or, canceled flight or whatever the case may be, just because obviously like everything in an airport and on a plane is disgusting and you don't want it touching anything. So the collapsible bowl was nice because I would put all my like pump parts in there and then like, it didn't have to touch the sink or anything. And then the wipes were really great, obviously, for when you can't get to a sink or something. So that's one, but that's a very specific hack. A more like everyone friendly hack is if you do travel a lot and it's beneficial to you, you can do TSA pre-check and you can also do clear. So I think people think like it's either one or the other or they're different, but you can stack the two together and then all of a sudden travel becomes a lot easier. You also can get, usually depending on what credit cards you have, if you have like American Express, Chase, a lot of those credit cards offer credits back for using any one of those programs. So it might cost like $100 to do the TSA pre-check, but you can actually get that credit back on your credit card statement if you go through that credit card. So stack clear and TSA pre-check together, and you literally breeze through without having to show an ID. You just like scan your eyes. It's super weird. And you're like cleared to go through, and it's literally like no TSA pre-check. It's crazy.
Oh, okay. So I've TSA pre-check and I tell everyone like, how have you not done this yet? It's not expensive. And now they have the little stations at the airport where you can like get an appointment and do it. So it makes it so easy.
TSA pre-check is like awesome. I feel like recently people have been really like jumping on the TSA pre-check side. So I feel like now when you go, it's still like the line is getting a little bit longer than it used to be in the beginning. But like I said, if you stack clear, you can do both. And so there's a lane usually when you go to, the bigger airports, there will be the TSA pre-check side, but then there's also like one right next to it that's clear and TSA pre-check. And you just walk up, you scan your eyes. You don't have to take out your ID. You don't have to show your passport. You just like breeze right through. And there's never a line because there's not that many people doing it yet. So get on it if you travel a lot.
Love that. Okay. What is your best piece of advice for women today to help them level up tomorrow?
Oh, I think there's two things that just worked for me, and maybe it doesn't work for everybody depending on your attitude and your personality, but I think number one is speak up. I don't have a filter usually, and I think that a lot of that I learned from interviewing people as well, where you want to dig into the things that maybe make people feel uncomfortable or because you want to get that story out. Again, it's always about the story. And so even in meetings and stuff, when we have big things, it always feels like, I feel like I'm super annoying. I'm always the one that's like unmuting at the end and being like, I have a question, or I don't know if I agree with this. And I always just speak my mind, because I also feel like if I don't speak up there, if I talk like on the side with whoever was running that meeting about whatever it is my issue, there's probably somebody else on the meeting that feels the same way. And having that answer right then and there means we're all thinking about it, as opposed to like going off to the side and having a conversation somewhere else. So I always say, like, just urge people to speak up. Don't be shy about whatever question you have or whatever you feel like you want to say, because it's important and people should hear it. And I think the second thing that has really helped me, and I've definitely said it earlier, I'm working on it still, is making sure that you're solutions oriented. I think that's huge, especially to level up, because as much as we want to speak up and we want to talk about like all the things that we want to do and, you know, all that stuff, that's great. But there's nothing worse than working with someone who isn't solutions oriented and who's not willing to just figure it out. Don't get stuck on the problem. It's so easy to like get stuck on what's making you angry or frustrating, or why this person isn't doing that thing. And that's very easy to do. The hard thing is just taking whatever that information is in that moment and going, okay, what am I going to do about it to fix it right now? And like our CEO at Spartan, Joe DeSena, he's like the most solutions oriented person I've ever met. And sometimes it's a little too much where I'm like, no, I just want you to hear me like vent about this issue. Don't come up with a solution for it yet. But it's like, again, something I've taken and really tried to apply to every single situation. And it's helped me a lot, because it just changes your focus right away. If you don't let that frustration sink in, then you immediately go to, how do I find a solution for this problem? What are the options I have? It's these. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. And then all of a sudden the problem's gone, you know?
That is such good advice. And that's really like the key difference of a leader, is being able to make the decisions and find the solutions. And you articulated that so well. Everyone can complain, but not everybody can find the solution. All right. What is your pump up song?
Okay, if you ask my husband what my pump up song is, he would say it's Baby Got Back. But that's not. There's a difference between a pump up song and like your dance song when you're in like the bar or the club. Baby Got Back is totally one of my favorites, but I'm weird. I'm totally into like rap music. And so any 3 6 Mafia song you put on immediately, like truly, if I'm on the plane and I'm going to a shoot, or I'm getting ready to go to an event and I want to just get like motivated, I just throw on 3 6 Mafia. And it's like a weird thing, but I just love them so much. Juicy J is so funny to me. And it just like puts me in like a good mood. And I don't know, they're just like silly. So I like that.
All right, so good. And then the final question is, what is your favorite quote?
It's kind of a long one, but it's from Gary Herschberg, who is the co-founder, and I think he was the former CEO, maybe. Yeah, I think he was the former CEO of Stonyfield Farm, which is like an organic yogurt company, which is super strange. But the quote is, quality, quality, quality. Never waver from it, even when you don't see how you can afford to keep it up. When you compromise, you become a commodity and then you die. And it's like kind of intense, but also is something that I have like pinned up on my wall next to me, that it's just like a reminder. I've had it as a part of my workspace for, I don't know, the better part of 5 years now. It's just something I always look at, because I just think of the fact that the second that I lower my standards or I lower my quality output, it affects everything else that I do. It's what I stand for. I always try to, push the bar up and keep echoing the fact that I want to keep moving and elevating the brands I work with. So I think it's always been something that really kind of like stands. It's just like in the background of my, behind my computer. And I always look at it when I'm kind of feeling a little not creative or down. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm going to like go for gold, because that's what I need to do.
So good. Okay. This has been such a great interview with you, talking about storytelling and leadership and growth and being honest. If you don't know what you're doing, this has been just such a good interview. And I know that our audience is going to gain so much from you. So thank you for sharing your time and your voice with the Leadership is Female podcast.
Thank you so much. I really hope that people get some sort of information out of this. And don't just feel like I'm blabbering about, because that's another thing I can do is talk forever. So
So where can we follow along and look at your great work?
well, I basically just only live on Instagram at Chris Dell with 2 underscores. And then I have a website, which is the cdlr.com, weird domain name that I bought like years ago and now I'm stuck with it. But yeah, that's kind of where I put all my work and everything up. So if you want to collab, let me know. I'll tell your story.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.